So, we all think we know Advent, right? It's that countdown to Christmas, chocolate calendars, maybe an elf on a shelf, and a whole lot of shopping lists. But what if I told you that the real story of Advent is so much deeper, way more ancient, and frankly, a lot more intense than that? What if that frantic, stressful energy we all feel in December is the complete opposite of what this season was originally about? Seriously. Because the whole point of Advent wasn't about getting ready for a party. It was a powerful, spiritual boot camp. I mean, just look at the difference. The world's Christmas is all about lists, stress, noise, and just frantic consumption. But the church's Advent? That was a whole different story. It was about vigilance, quiet preparation, and intentional silence. It wasn't about buying things, it was about making space for something or someone truly profound. So let's dive in. Let's start with the first week of Advent, which, believe it or not, kicks off with this really serious, vigilant tone. We're not talking jingle bells just yet. This is about getting ready for the arrival of a king. And right away, we hit a huge difference. The season doesn't start with a gentle, sweet lullaby. It starts with a serious challenge. See, it has this dual focus. Yes, preparing for the baby in Bethlehem, but just as importantly, preparing for Christ's final return at the end of time. It's about getting ready for both comings.
And you don't have to take my word for it. These are the words of Jesus himself. Keep awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. I mean, that sets the tone, doesn't it? This isn't about being sentimental and sleepy. It's about being spiritually alert, on your toes, and ready.
Now, today, of course, we think of Advent as the 4 Sundays leading up to Christmas. That's the tradition most of us know and love. But was it always this neat and tidy 4-week period? The historical answer is a big, fascinating no. Not even close. Get this. In many early Christian traditions, Advent was actually known as St. Martin's Lent. It was this tough, penitential season that was a lot like the Lent we have before Easter. And it didn't start 4 weeks before Christmas. It started all the way back on November 11th. Yep, you heard that right. A full 40 days. This was not a cheerful, festive wait. It was a time for intense repentance and spiritual house cleaning. The idea was that real Christmas joy had to be earned, It came through deep, meaningful preparation. All right, so as the season moves on, this disruptive voice comes roaring out of the wilderness, and he brings both this really harsh warning and, surprisingly, a command to be joyful. And that voice, it belongs to John the Baptist. We kind of see him as a side character in our Christmas plays, but in the story of Advent, he is front and center. And his message was not a gentle welcome mat. No way. It was this wild, confrontational call to radically change your life. He'd say things like, "The axe is laid to the root of the trees," making it crystal clear that the stakes were incredibly high. And to really get why John's arrival was such a big deal, you have to understand the context. After the prophet Malachi, there were 400 years of prophetic silence. 4 centuries where it felt like God was just quiet. And then, bam, John the Baptist explodes out of the wilderness, shattering that silence and signaling that God's plan is kicking into high gear. But then, right in the middle of all this intense repentance, the tone pivots dramatically. The third Sunday is called Gaudete Sunday, which comes from the Latin opening prayer for that day. Gaudete in Domino Semper, which means rejoice in the Lord always. And this, I think, is just a brilliant distinction for us today. The world demands happiness from us during the holidays, right? Which is often just this temporary hype based on how busy we are. But the church commands rejoicing. And that's totally different. It's a strategic act of hope. It's grounded in the certainty that the Lord is near. It's basically a spiritual weapon to fight back against all the stress of the season. Okay, this brings us to the climax of the whole season, the final days leading right up to Christmas. And this is my favorite part, because hidden inside these days is an incredible secret code that's been part of the tradition for centuries. So, from December 17th to the 23rd, the church chants these 7 ancient prayers called the O Antiphons. An antiphon is basically just a short chant, and each one of these calls out to Christ using a different, powerful title from the Old Testament, building the anticipation day by day. Now, they're beautiful and powerful all on their own. But like I said, there's something else going on here. A hidden message, a code, locked right inside the very structure of these ancient prayers. Okay, here's the secret. This is so cool. If you take the first letter of each antiphone's Latin title, sapientia, Adonai, and so on, but, and this is the key, you list them in reverse order, starting with the last one, you get this sequence of letters EROCRAS. So what does EROCRAS spell out? Well, in Latin, it spells aerocras, and that translates to a breathtakingly simple and powerful promise. Tomorrow I will be there. I mean, can you imagine? After centuries of waiting, after weeks of intense preparation, the whole season builds to this hidden, certain promise whispered from God. Wow, so after all that ancient history and this incredible secret code, what does any of this actually mean for us, right now, in our crazy busy lives? How do we connect with it? Well, it means that embracing the true spirit of Advent, its slowness, its call to silence, its focus on real preparation, is actually a powerful act of spiritual resistance. It's a way to push back against all the commercial noise that tries to hijack the season, and it's how we can reclaim its deeper meaning for ourselves. So, as the long wait finally draws to a close, and that promise of Aerocrasta becomes a reality, the question for us isn't about whether all the shopping is done. It's this: in the quiet, final hours before Christmas, how will you make room for the King?